Prime Minister, what is your vision of this frozen conflict in the area in the short period of time?
Well, thank you.
Please.
Well, first of all, I would say that I don't like this word frozen conflict. I think we are proud and dynamic societies, and we try to solve this problem. But let me just remind everyone about Georgia's situation. The world today is focused on Ukraine and the crisis of Ukraine. I'm also very much concerned about the crisis in Ukraine. But before Ukraine, it was Georgia, only 6 years ago, in 2008. And unfortunately, the world...
Do you think that we underestimated at that time?
I think so. I think the world didn't pay enough attention to the conflict between Russia and Georgia in 2008. And maybe it's easy to say today that if the world paid enough attention to the conflict in 2008, then we would have avoided the conflict in Ukraine, right? Because you remember that nobody imposed economic sanctions to Russia in 2008, and the reaction was not appropriate from the international community. And this is the result of the Ukrainian crisis. This is the continuation, I would say. But I'm going to remind everyone about this problem, right? Where this problem comes from. In our case, this it began in 22 years ago.
Briefly.
Yeah. And since then, this conflict hasn't been solved. I would say that the scenario is basically similar to other conflicts in the region, right? As we say, the so-called time bombs were activated in the early 90s, and we have over 400,000 IDPs. There was an ethnic cleansing Georgian ethnic cleansing, and the situation is dramatic. 20% of our territory is occupied today, and there has been no progress, although we tried to normalize relationship with Russia, and you know that we came to power 2 years ago, and we entirely changed our attitude towards Russia. We remember that President Putin was saying that they couldn't negotiate with President Saakashvili, the former president, but the government has changed. Former Prime Minister Ivanishvili initiated this direct dialogue format with the Russian government, and we have showed to the world, to the Russians, that we are a constructive people, constructive government. We want to have peace and normalized relationship with Russia. But how can we restore the trust between Russia and Georgia? What we did is that we separated political and economic and trade relationship from each other. Of course, there has been some improvements on the economic and trade relationship. We improved the cultural relationship and so on, but on the political side, there has been no progress. On the contrary, I'm telling you that we have made everything. We have put a lot of constructive steps in order to de-escalate tension and in order to solve this problem, or at least to start talking about this problem, right? About the deoccupation of our territories, and then we would start immediate reconciliation with our brothers and sisters, Abkhazians and Ossetians. But Russians, just 2 months ago, in November, they signed a new treaty with Abkhazia, and they're going to sign a similar document with Ossetia this month. So, of course, Russia didn't respond to our constructive policy in the same manner, and that's why it is really hard for us to predict what is the next step of Russia towards us.
Garibashvili, you are basically saying that international community has made a mistake dealing with the crisis back in 2006. Are we repeating the same mistakes at the moment dealing with the crisis in Ukraine?
Well, I think the reaction from the international society is, I would say, more appropriate.
More strong?
I would say stronger. Stronger, I would say, than it was.
Not strong enough?
Well, we will see. We will see the results.
Okay.
But in our case, definitely not. The world just, I would say, forgot about the Georgian problem. And one should always remember that it began in 2008.
And this panel is because of our political will to remember once again, us all over the world, that we are facing still conflicts not to be forgotten because of the crisis in Ukraine. What would you say, beside the lack of political will to solve it, what would be the recipe in your case with your experience to deal with?
I agree with this idea that, what we're, lacking is the willingness, right? Is the political will. So, and this problem can be solved. Because we have shown, we proved to our Abkhazians, to Ossetians, that we want to have peace. We want to live peacefully with that.
It seems like you are saying you have political will to deal with the problem. You have political will to deal with the problem. I've listened President Poroshenko saying, I am convinced, I'm really in favor of get involved once again. Do you think that Russian Federation is completely out of willingness to deal with crisis, that it is its intention to make crisis situation all over the places?
Well, I think, unfortunately I would say, because listen, we in the last 2 years, we have demonstrated our will that we want to have normalized good relationship with Russia. And we want to be good friends. And we did not give the Russians any reason in the last 2 years, I mean, when we came to power, to blame Georgia for something, for some provocations. But from the Russian side, they did not respond to our constructive and friendly policy in the same manner, in the same spirit. They installed about 60 kilometers of barbed wire fences. The Berlin Wall broke down 20 years ago, right? Something like this. And 25 years ago. And we're just restoring some dividing lines in the 21st century on our territory. Many Georgian families left their houses behind this barrier. It's not going to help to restore trust between us. And I have to say that one could not imagine that Russia, would annex Crimea, for example. Because, let me just repeat this, this idea that, by annexing the Crimea, right, Russia basically lost Ukraine and Ukrainians. Because how could you restore the trust with the people, with the country, when you annex its territory? This is very simple.
Are you saying, Mr. President, Prime Minister, that what Russia was and is doing is, premeditated, reflected policy in the region? Yes or no?
Well, let's talk by actions, right? Actions prove by itself. So
okay. The very first step that would be very positive.
You mean
decisive? Yes.
From the Georgian side?
Yeah. That you would do it, maybe.
That we would do.
Or what do you
think? We've tried, if not everything, many things. And we're also very open for any discussion, for the negotiations. I mentioned Russia and our new approach towards Russia, because we entirely changed our policy towards them, and we wanted to normalize the relationship with them. We expressed our readiness to have, high-level negotiations but we said that we made it very clear that we need to prepare this meeting. Also, President Putin said that he is also ready to meet with the leadership of Georgia, with the new leadership. And I can, repeat once again that we are also ready. I mean, we are for this talk. But of course, we need to prepare it, and we need to be result-oriented. But again, I wanted to add that what we see right now is the lack of willingness. That's what we see right now.
Okay. Now, here we have questions for you two, Mr. President and Mr. Prime Minister. Does the Russian government have defined objectives in the Georgian and Armenian crisis? What are the objectives? Mr. Prime Minister, your answer to this question.
Thank you. I agree with President Aliyev that we have excellent cooperation, excellent relationship between Georgia and Azerbaijan and Turkey, and of course, if Armenia would join us, in this cooperation, that would be even better and excellent for all of us, and even for Russia, and because Russia also should be interested in having peace and stability in the Caucasus region. The Caucasus region, yeah, but we don't see this will again. So because, for example, Georgia is a gateway to Europe, and this region, Caucasus region, this corridor is extremely important. It's getting more important. Together with President Aliyev, we're talking about several big projects, such as the Shah Deniz Phase 2, which was launched last year in September. And I was in Baku, and we're building a railroad, Baku-Tbilisi-Kars, and so this should be in everyone's interest to have peace and stability, because if one of these Caucasus countries gets destabilized, it's going to be reflected on the entire region, on the Caucasus region. So it is in our interest, in the Russian government's interest, it should be in the Russian government's interest to have peace and stability.
It is such a difference between should be and will be.
That's right, though. That's right.
Lady over there, please, you have the floor.
Thank you. Ekatkashelashvili, Georgian Institute of Strategic Studies, former Foreign Minister of Georgia. I think there is a very big fundamental issue that we're missing while discussing the conflicts, looking at them as if they are disconnected from each other. Because in a way, they are fundamentally connected, and being part of the larger puzzle, connected with Russia's vision of having a special entitlement, so-called sphere of influence around it in its own neighborhood, and using conflicts, frozen conflicts, at times they're not quite frozen as we all know, as a leverage basically to influence respective countries in terms of their own internal political discourse and foreign policy discourses as well. And at different times, different countries became testing grounds basically for Russia in that respect. 2008, it was Georgia. It was aggression against neighbor, open use of force, continued occupation, by the way, selective implementation of the ceasefire agreement signed by the Russia, approved by the European Union at that time, something that Russia tries to do now with the Minsk agreement in Ukraine. Ukraine is the biggest hotspot right now. It will be the deal breaker for all of us. And we clearly believe that the fate of our countries in so many ways depends what will be the outcome in Ukraine right now. So my question is twofold with that regard to the Prime Minister of Georgia. One is that what are the challenges that in his opinion one should be aware of while Georgia embarks on the process of association agreements implementation, including DCFTA, and while building closer ties with NATO as an aspirant country? What can one can expect from Russia to impede that process? And then how Georgia can make sure that we are resilient to those challenges? And then second, having this special attention on Ukraine, is it position of the Georgian government that it's high time right now in order to break the tide to help Ukraine win defense capabilities so they are in a better position to defend themselves while facing aggression from Russia?
Before Prime Minister will answer your question, so you're basically saying that the lack of political will on the Russian side is not circumstantial, it is policy.
I would say that there is no lack of political will. There's a very clear will of establishing its full sphere of influence in the neighborhood and resolve to act upon it. So there's no lack of that.
Thank you, ma'am. Please, Mr. Prime Minister.
You see how people love me in Georgia? She took a flight to come here and put a question. I'm joking, but thank you for these questions. we're talking about spheres of influence and so on, but I think, you know, I was talking about the restoration of trust.
Right.
And I think that if you look at the Ukrainian example or Georgian example, when you occupy someone's territory and when you don't show your will to solve this problem with that country, I mean, this will be very difficult to restore the trust and to achieve the peace, right, and with that country. And again, this will be very difficult for anyone to keep that, you know, to maintain this, if we call it so-called sphere of interest or influence. Now, of course, we are dedicated to our choice, to our European path. Last year we signed the association agreement with the European Union and DCFTA, which is an integral part of this agreement. And the entire government is focused on its timely and effective implementation. Of course, Russia is not satisfied. And of course, we're already facing challenges because of our European choice, because of our Euro-Atlantic choice. But I want to make it very clear again that this choice was made by the Georgian people. Not in 2012, not in 2004, but centuries ago. Our ancestors made this decision to join the big European family. And again, it is not against anyone. It is not against Russia. On the contrary, I want to put emphasis on this, that it is not against Russian Federation.
It seems like Russian Federation understands that it has been an agreement between NATO or Western side and Russian Federation in the 90s that countries around Russian Federation would not be invited to join NATO. How do you comment on this position?
Well, you know, on the NATO
other side, you have sovereign right to decide.
Absolutely, that's the choice of the sovereign state and sovereign nation. But again, we're going back to that spheres of influence, and you know, maybe psychologically it is hard to admit and to understand that this is the choice of a sovereign state, sovereign nation, and we live in the 21st century, and we cannot break international rules like this. But again, I think the architecture of the international security is already broken, and the rules have changed. So therefore, I think we should all together think about a new approach, right?
Everybody's speaking about new approach because of different nature of problems. And what new approach do you have in mind, if any?
Well, I don't have a concrete solution. It's good that we have, for example, yesterday Chancellor Merkel and President Hollande went to Moscow and to talk with President Putin. This is the right way.
Good signal.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
To have to negotiate and to solve this problem by peaceful means. And again, for me, and I think for the majority of us, there's no alternative to the peaceful negotiation.
Okay.
My name is Walter Kemp from the International Peace Institute. My question is for the Prime Minister of Georgia. You mentioned that there's a bilateral agreement between Abkhazia and Russia, and another one being drafted between South Ossetia and Russia. When you talk to the South Ossetians and the Abkhaz, what is the power of attraction of Georgia? What can you offer them which is better than the status quo at the moment to try and normalize or even reconsolidate the situation?
Thank you. Well, first, this new treaty on alliance and integration means a deeper integration of these territories into the Russian Federation. Basically, what we can and what we are offering our Abkhazian and Ossetian brothers and sisters is the European future, is the prosperous, developed Georgia, and truly democratic and truly European state. I mentioned the association agreement. This is a master plan. This is an action plan of our country's modernization and of our country's Europeanization. Now we're working on a visa liberalization action plan. And most likely we will have a positive assessment from the European Commission, and we're preparing ourselves for the Riga summit, which will be held this year in May. For example, if Georgians will be able to travel visa-free in Europe, this is one of the attractions for Abkhazians, for Ossetians, because now, unfortunately, they're totally isolated from the civilized world, from the world. And I really worry about the future of Abkhazians and Ossetians, because I truly believe that they don't have a good future without Georgians, without us. Because this treaty means, this is basically, we consider it as another step toward annexation of our territories, and I can tell you that Abkhazians and Ossetians are brave people, you know, and we love these people, we love this ethnic group, this ethnicity, and we want to protect them, and we want to save their future. And I think the European perspective is one of the attractiveness of Abkhazians and Ossetians. Good, you know, better education, better healthcare, better, you know, social conditions. Open Georgia, you know, that's, and prosperous Georgia, together with Abkhazians and together with Ossetians.
Simple one is question for you, especially Vesna, I mean, and for Borat, my dear friends. What do you think, I mean, we should do with Dayton? A peace accord. I mean, it's $1 billion question, of course.
This will prolong
you know,
the meeting for
just,
a couple of days.
Just a little simple question. When we should start fixing it? When should we start fixing it? Because Vesna, it's not about, I wouldn't call it frozen peace. I would rather call it, because frozen peace may look nice. But we have a problem. We are actually in non-changing state of the state. And that's the problem. And everything that is not changing is actually dying. So our problem is how to speed up changes. And I strongly appreciate, I want to salute to you and of course to Borat for new EU initiative that was given to Bosnia and Herzegovina, because it's maybe a good new way that we shouldn't miss to start unlocking the process of changes, which will lead to changes of our constitution and which will lead us to not being denying Hoxha and Srebrenica to go in a better future.
Thank you very much for this question. Thank you for addressing this issue. You're absolutely right. We should have such a situation that the international community does not ignore what happened in order to make lessons and in order not to have the same tragedy in other parts of the world. Unfortunately, tragedy in Hoxha is not very well known, especially to European public opinion. Though now it's more than 10 countries which officially recognize Hoxha as a genocide. And as a result of this genocide, more than 600 innocent people were killed, 106 women, 63 children, and the only guilt of these people was that they were Azerbaijanis. So Armenians, unfortunately, until now, they did not, how to say, confess of this war crime. They did not even apologize for that. They want to mislead international public opinion about what they have done in Hoxha. And due to the very active Armenian lobbying group in Europe, in the United States, they managed to distract attention of international community from this tragedy. And it didn't get a lot of publicity, though everything is documented. It is filmed. We have evidences of those who survived that genocide. We have film documents of completely destroyed children and women. Therefore, in order these things not to happen again, of course, those who committed this crime, first they should at least apologize and admit that it happened, that admit these war crimes so that it never happens again. And reconciliation can happen only after that. If that happens, it will be easier to reconcile. But I'm strongly convinced that one day we will. Possible. I think it is possible because we lived together. We lived with Armenians side by side in peace. There were a lot of mixed marriages and there were no hostility. In Baku, there were maybe 200,000 Armenians lived, and we have still now Armenian church in the center of Baku, which is now under, after renovation, repaired. But Azerbaijani mosques in Shusha, in Agdam, are totally destroyed. They shouldn't have done that in the first place, but now they should admit that that was wrong. They should apologize. And then, of course, we will reconcile, because sooner or later we'll have peace, and then two nations will live side by side together.
I would like to thank Mr. Deputy Prime Minister to mention this very important issue of reconciliation. The whole European idea is based on reconciliation. So no conflict whatsoever could be resolved without searching for reconciliation. Do you have any comment? Yeah.
No, I agree with you. And we are also ready for immediate reconciliation with our brothers and sisters. That's how I call them, Plazians and Ossetians, because we live together. And this is, you know, this is our history. This is very, you know, natural coexistence or status, right? And I agree with you know, with you that we should reconcile, because then there's no alternative to the peace in general.
Mr. Prime Minister, would you like to answer the whole variety of issues that?
Well, I also want to join Madam Minister and thank you and thank the audience for giving us this opportunity to speak about our problems, to our conflicts, and because we're looking for a solution, and you know, this is the right way, and let's hope that one day we will gather here in Munich, and we will celebrate the reconciliation. I think that's the last word, I would say.
Thank you.